Recording.
Thanks, Clive. Good evening, all. Welcome to tonight's session, which is slightly off normal because it's to do with how we manage our pennies, and effectively, it's me just really trying to put what I call financial literacy under the microscope for us to really appreciate what it is about, what it requires, and how to really utilize those skill sets to really take control of our finances to the extent that we want to take it. Now, this topic is quite vast. So what I've tried to do is just stick to the basics today, in the understanding that if there's a need to expand further later on, we can do that. But today is just really to get the basics right, i.e. how we utilize one's earnings to really help us fulfill our obligations, but also be able to save a bit to invest for the future as well. So I will run you through a few slides, and then there's a little 4 or 5 minute video that really expands on some aspects of what we cover. The idea is that after the conversation or after the presentation, then we can have a chat around issues that one might have had in their mind, and we'll see where that takes us. So I'm going to start the process by running through these slides, followed by the clip, and then we can then have the questions and discussions that follow after that. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. So we'll start now. So here we go. We're looking at financial literacy. Sorry. Start the slide. Thank you. Is that screen clear enough for everyone?
Yes.
Good.
Cool, thanks. Okay, so I'm gonna start kickstart the process by just really trying to expand on what financial literacy is all about. So this, as I said, is a brief introduction. So first up is, what do we mean, or what do we understand by financial literacy? Now, there's this saying in finance that money is the only 5-letter word that you can never have enough of. But if you have enough of it, it can get you out of almost all your troubles to a certain extent. So if you bear that in mind, that's what we refer to as liquidity. So liquidity is really when you have access to money to pay for your bills, to sort out your immediate needs, or to do anything you want financially. So financial literacy, in a sum, is this. So it's our ability to understand and effectively use various financial skills. Firstly, personal financial management. So anything that's to do with your earnings, that's to do with your personal financial needs, how you manage it is included in this process. So it starts from what you earn, what you pay for, what you plan to do for the future, your big commitments that have financial implications, and even retirement. So it's all included in that. The next critical bit is budgeting. Now, today's effort will actually focus on budgeting, because I think it's the one area that if you can get right, then all the other things that come of it just kind of, they just, if you like, dovetail each other well enough for you to know where you are. So for example, as an accountant, I roughly can tell you what's in my bank balance literally every day, because I just know that that's how my brain works. Some people, if they don't see the statement, they don't know about it. So this is how budgeting comes to help in that process, yeah? The next thing is investing. Now, investing is really how you make your money work for you after you've actually undertaken all your obligations, which is to do with paying your bills, meeting your immediate commitments. So that extra you have, I mean, when I was growing up, my parents would say, okay, you need to open a post office account in Africa, and you get a little bit of interest. So investing starts with that little thing, to doing investments in stocks and shares, or investing in property or bonds or whatever. But it's really how you use your money to leverage it to give you income going forward in the future. So effectively, financial sort of literacy is the foundation of our relationship with money. If you get this wrong, then everything surrounding money around you just falls into pieces. So this is why it's just the building blocks. So the aim here is to, sorry, I can't see this bit here. I'm going to just close the screen. The aim here is to, sorry about this. Okay, I got it now. The aim is to navigate the challenging but critical waters of personal finance. And when we mean critical, it's times when, if you imagine you have commitments that would just hit you in the face unseen, like an emergency, family emergency, or how many of us have gone home and find the boiler isn't playing ball that day and you didn't put away money for it and it can be repaired, or you all of a sudden find that you need to make a new purchase of a car. So those critical things, if you have your finances in order, you can foresee those things coming. You plan for them in a way that means that those blows don't hit you as hard as they would if you were unprepared for it. So, okay. In dealing with financial literacy, there are what we call the core competencies. And these are the 5 core competencies you could see featured here. We mentioned earnings. Earnings are important because really, if you can imagine, if you didn't earn, then you can't really fulfill your financial obligations to the extent that you need. You won't have the financial security you need. So it's the number one bit that if you didn't have, then you probably stand very little chance of fulfilling the other things we're looking at. And then we then go on to savings and investing. We talked about savings and investing earlier on. So if you imagine somebody was being paid, let's say £1, and they spend maybe 80 of that pound, they have 20p left. Some of us will decide, actually, we'll use that to go and just have a good time. Others will think, I want to make that 20p grow. So that's where the saving and investing comes in, is how you make that 20p become more than 20p going forward. And the spending, again, if you imagine you're earning as a cake, you would have to divide it in different quarters to fulfill your spending requirements. So that's what it is. So that cake is only one piece of cake. You got to make it work for you. So the spending is how you slice and dice the cake to meet all those obligations that you have going for you. And borrowing is actually when, if you imagine your earning is lower than your spending, so there's a gap. And how do you make that gap? You go and borrow. But as we know, with borrowing, it's not free, it's a liability. And borrowing comes in 2 forms. There's what you call good borrowing or healthy borrowing, and that's what you call not too good borrowing. We can look at that later on. And then we look at protecting your hard-earned money. In this area, what we're looking at is really how you go into insurances, how you set yourself up for life post-employment, so you protect your earnings so that you get into employer pension schemes, or equally invest your money in other things that at a time when your earnings will dip, you have a sustainable source of income to see you through those times when you're not in employment anymore. So those are the core competencies, which are like hygiene factors that to really be on top of your finances, you really would help yourself being on top of. So we firstly want to look at the if you like, the tools or the approaches that you need to enhance one's financial literacy. Firstly, you need to create a budget. So in creating a budget, what we're looking at here is, if you imagine that money you've earned that comes in, a budget is the first port of call that helps you really manage that money. So what does that entail? So you need to know, firstly, what your earnings are. So from your earnings, you then figure out, how can I use these earnings to really fulfill all my financial obligations, both long and short term? We look into that as well. And then there's this bit surrounding paying yourself first. So by that, it's really, if you effectively imagine, it's a reverse budget. So when we say pay yourself first, it's how you go about savings. So you try to say, okay, out of this £1 I've got to pay myself first as a saving for rainy days for the future, what proportion of my £1 do I want to reflect in that bit there? So the next bit is how you go about developing the discipline of paying your bills promptly. Now, as individuals, you realize nobody forces you to pay your bills, but if you don't do it, you realize the letters will come your way and they'll end up being escalated to getting bills to come in, and that could impact on your credit ratings and everything. So that's a very good area to really be on top of. And the other important thing is, I don't know how many of us do this as well, is obtaining your credit report. So I, for example, have like a credit report every month that I subscribe to. So it tells me how I'm doing, and it compares my ratings or my score to the area I live in. So I want to know whether I'm above average or below average. And the reason this is important is it impacts on how much it costs you to borrow when you go to borrow. So we know of people that probably have had difficulties borrowing, or they find when they go to borrow, the interest rate is slightly steeper than average because they haven't been on top of that. So your credit report and credit score are things that you give the utmost importance, just like you'll go to a petrol station and top up your car every month, do that as a matter of course. The next important bit is managing debt, okay? Debt is good and is bad, but what we're saying here is really, you mustn't let it get out of hand. So the whole point of budgeting when it comes to debt management is to help stay on top of your commitments that way. You know, so sometimes you might find you need to increase your payments, so that means you need to reduce expenditure in certain areas. It's just how you juggle that. So you develop strategies around that just to help you manage that area. And then the final bit is really investing in your future. I think earlier on when we spoke, I mentioned how you look at life post-employment. So when you enter retirement, how are you gonna continue to sustain your standard of living if your earnings drop to the extent that they would be, because you're no longer in employment? So you look at how you join employers' pension schemes. You look at how you learn to invest in stocks and shares and government bonds or other fixed income, if you like, investment vehicles. So those are the things that, you know, when you have that £1, you see how you use every penny to fulfill those obligations for you. Are we okay with this so far?
I am. I don't know about all of others.
Yes,
Okay, thanks. Thanks.
Yes, yes.
Okay, sorry, I'm just getting my slides right. Okay, I talked about budgeting. So we need to answer this question of why we need to budget. So I, as a matter of course, will sit down and over the course of 12 months, I'll set a budget from, like, I know the financial year starts from April. So I'll have a budget that will say, okay, my earnings are £1. Over the course of 12 months, I'll earn £12 for the year. So how do I make that money work for me over the course of those 12 months? For every month, I will then list what my expenses are. I don't know about yourself, my spikes tend to be, apart from my mortgage commitments, is when you have to make that insurance payment, when you have to go on holiday, when you have to do that repairs. So you really develop strategies where, you know, actually, if my insurances are renewed every September, you start saving for it from like April rather than wait until September, because it'll be tight. So these are the sort of things that we're looking at while answering that question. So I budget and we budget to grasp our money management. So we want to have better handle on the hard earned cash we've got. So if you don't budget, it goes as fast as it comes. So to really avoid that, you then start by saying, how do I understand where every penny that I earn goes? And how do I plan to make it work for me? Okay, the next bit is your money is coming in margin now. So you want to know where you spend your money each month. So when you have a budget, it will be line by line. So you maybe go from your rent or your mortgage to your utilities, to your food bills, to your family expenses and all the other associated costs. So that's where this will get you if you are that methodical about it. And then it gives you control of your finances, because the mere fact that you budget, you will get surprises and you think, oh, I didn't realize this cost me this much, for example, or I don't like the way this is sitting with me. Now, you can adopt two strategies. You can adopt what I call the ostrich syndrome, which is bury your head thinking, you'll get okay. we'll get past that. Or you can say, actually, no, I need to really take control now and start adjusting your finances to meet that sort of requirement. But importantly as well, we're not here to spend the whole pound that we got for that month. The whole strategy is, if you're on top of your finances, knowing where everything goes, you should be able to leave yourself a little bit to save for the future or for the unknown. So this is why we budget. Okay. Now we want to go into the steps of really creating a budget. So firstly, you want to note your net income. And I think we touched on that the last time. And why that is that your pay slip tells you what your gross earnings are, if we remember, but the money you take home or the money that hits your bank account is different. So let's say my employer says I'll earn £24 in the year. So my gross pay per month is £2. But if I take into account my NI deductions, tax, pension contributions, and other commitments, it may mean that actually out of the £2 I get, maybe it's £1.50 I take home, or that's what's registered as my account. So that's your net income. So you mustn't confuse that with the £2 that is in your payslip, because really that is the gross amount before you take all the deductions. So you must know that. And the reason that is important is it just prevents you from overspending. Track your spending. Now, this is critical because it's like the thing is, it's helpful to keep track of your spending so that you can know where you can make adjustments if things are not going your way. So in my case, I realized that when I make my budgets, there are things that are wants and there are things that are needs. So if I have, for example, I have a utility bill to pay, that's probably my gas bill came in and it's higher than normal, I have to find a way of making a saving. So I go away from that want and I go to my needs, which is like maybe I wanted to go and see a show, or maybe I wanted to go on a holiday. Then I have to dig and say, no, actually, maybe I need to defer the holiday to allow for me to make that commitment. So that's how you go about tracking your spending, to know where to cut back on when there's a need for it. The next bit is setting your goals. And here really, it's important that when we talk about goals, you realize they're short and long-term goals. So I imagine when we're all young, started employment, we're all looking to buying a home, for example. So you set a long-term goal where you save over a period of 1 to 5 years to save for that mortgage deposit you need to move into your house. So that's a long-term goal. A short-term goal is anything less than up to 12 months. So if I wanted to go to holiday, say next summer, that's short-term goals for me. So then that's how you prioritize what comes first, what is long-term, so that you can really fulfill your financial obligations or dreams the way you want it. And then make a plan, okay? So making a plan, again, surrounds how you know what we call fixed expenses. So a fixed expense is something that doesn't change. And one example of that is, for example, your mortgage payments, apart from the fact that interest rates would fluctuate if you don't have a fixed rate, or your rent commitments, because those are constantly the same. And to a certain extent, your utilities bills as well. Yeah. But and the next bit is what we call your variable expenses. This vary with each month. They might go up and down. So one area is maybe your food bill. It could vary in certain cases. Also, to a certain extent, even your utilities or your fuel bill. If you imagine you do more mileage one month than you normally do, it will rocket up. So it's just really being able to make a plan around those things. You know when these things are happening, so you take the right corrective measures from a planning point of view. The other thing is, adjust your habits. And what we mean by this is, when you have this push and pull between wants and needs, so you really need to be able to adjust yourself. Don't be wedded to a need for the sake of it. Oh, I can't do without my holiday, for example, when you got your mortgage company saying actually you're behind your mortgage payments, or your landlord saying you're behind your rents. So you don't let your heart rule your head, if you like. Go for your wants first, and you'll do your needs later on. So that's how you adjust your habits to fit that. So, now there's a school of thought around these things as well. For those of us that are into budgeting, there's a tip, and it's a rule of thumb that for those of us that are here today, it's just something I want you to take note of. So one of the approaches we have is really to help reach our goals. If you imagine you said in 12 months time or in 5 years time, this is where I want to be. The rule of thumb we use is just really to say, in order to reach your goals, manage your money and save for emergencies and importantly retirement. We call it the 50, 20 and 30% spending rule. Yeah. So what that means is, if you imagine your needs, your wants and savings. So what we're saying here is that £1 you get paid per month or that you take home as a net pay, as a rule of thumb, 50% should go towards your needs. Yeah. And then I've got this wrong. 50% should go towards your wants actually, and then 50% towards your wants and 30 towards your needs and 20% towards your saving, because really the wants are the needs are, I'm confusing my needs. The needs are the things that you need to fulfill. So your mortgage commitments, your utilities bills, your loan repayments, they are things that you cannot really negate. So you need to make sure all those commitments fit that 50% bracket of the cake. And the 30% are the things that you can negotiate around. Yeah. So if you imagine I wanted to go to cinema every week, and it come to a point that my bills that I must fulfill, such as my mortgage, are more than I expected, I will go after the things that I can do without. And that way, that's how I make the adjustments. And the savings is saying, like, out of that £1 I take home, if I save 20% every month, so if you imagine, by the time I come to the end of the year, I would have something like £2.40 in my bank, and it goes next year £4.80. So by the time you get to year 5, you've got so much money to fulfill your long-term obligations. So now I've got a little video just to really amplify on what we've been talking about, because I didn't want to bring any spreadsheets to really bore people to death. So I'm going to run that through it. It might take about 5 to 6 minutes. After that, we'll just touch on the final end there. So please bear with me. I'll make sure this works, hopefully. Ooh, having problems. Let's see, it might come on soon. Okay.
Keeping a detailed budget can be one of the best ways to help you save money and avoid overspending. But not everyone has the time or the desire.
We're still seeing your
basis.
Your presentation.
You're still seeing the presentation? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me start share again. Sorry, Clive. Thanks for that.
Share again and just share the video.
Thank you. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to start the video. Thanks, Clive.
Keeping a detailed budget can be one of the best ways to help you save money and avoid overspending. But not everyone has the time or the desire to sit down with a spreadsheet on a regular basis. You may have even tried to keep a budget before, but it didn't work out. You're not alone. Fortunately, there are some ways you can manage your money without a traditional spreadsheet. Now, the most important part of managing your money is making sure your needs are covered. This will require a bit of math, but it doesn't need to be complicated. Start by figuring out all of your regular monthly expenses. This will be your regular bills, like rent or mortgage payments, all your utilities, insurance payments, and any other loan or credit card payments you make each month. Then, estimate your other necessary expenses, like what you spend per month on groceries and transportation costs. Add all these costs up and you've got your baseline, what you need to cover every month. When it comes to paying your regular bills, setting up alerts on a calendar can help to remind you to pay them a few days before they're due. Or to make it even easier, you can try automating some of your payments. You can sign up for automatic bill pay with your utility companies, lenders, and in some cases, even with your landlord. The amount you owe each month will be automatically withdrawn from your bank account or charged to your credit card. Automating payments can save you time and effort every month and help make sure your bills are paid on time. Just be sure you always have enough money available in your account to cover all of your automatic withdrawals. And if you use a credit card, make sure you can pay the balance in full each month in order to avoid paying interest on those charges. If you change your mind and decide that automatic payments aren't for you, you can always cancel your scheduled payments and go back to paying manually. Automatic payments can also be a great way to help you systematically pay down debt if you set up extra payments towards your loans. And they can help you grow your savings if you set up regular contributions to a savings account. This can be especially helpful if you've had trouble saving in the past. To help yourself prioritize saving, you can try thinking of saving as a bill you have to pay to yourself. Even if it's just a small amount, making automatic payments to yourself can help you build up an emergency fund or a retirement account. Once you've taken care of your regular bills and savings, you have a bit more flexibility with what's left. But if you find yourself overspending from month to month, you might want to try tracking your spending. One simple way of doing this is using the envelope method. While it might sound old-fashioned, putting a set amount of cash in envelopes each month for different purposes, like groceries, transportation, dining out, and just general spending money, can help you set limits on what you spend. So then, if you find yourself spending more than you had available in any of your envelopes, you might need to make adjustments the following month. Another way you can keep track of your spending with little effort is to use a single debit or credit card that can track and categorize your expenses for you. By keeping all of your purchases on one card, you'll only have one monthly statement that shows how much you've spent and where you spent it. So it can be easier to see where you might be overspending and how you might cut back. Plus, many banks now have online tools that can categorize your spending for you. So you'll be able to get an idea of what you spend on different things like entertainment, groceries, or dining out. Many banks also offer account alerts that will let you know when you've reached certain spending limits. If using a single card is too limiting, money management software or apps can help you link all of your accounts and automatically track your spending and saving for you. Many of these have even more detailed tools to help you analyze your spending, and they also have alerts that can warn you if you might be overspending in one category. And finally, if you feel like setting limits on your spending is a challenge, consider making one of your goals a small reward to yourself, whether it's a treat at the end of a long week or putting aside a little extra toward a large purchase you really want. Rewarding yourself might help you feel more motivated about managing your money, as long as it doesn't push you into overspending. While a detailed budget can be a great motivational tool to help you cut costs and reach your savings goals, it's not the only answer. As long as you pay attention to the basics, make sure your needs are covered, manage your debts and savings, and avoid overspending, you will be setting the groundwork for a more secure financial future.
Thank you. Just go back to the slides then. That was the slide. Okay. Now, that's really the crux of what I was trying to get at, the message I was trying to put across it, because the topic of financial literacy is quite broad. There are other areas that I wanted to touch on, which is to do with insurance and also just fraud and risk. But I just thought it's too much to load people with one evening. But I can touch on something like, on the protection side, on the core competencies. When we talk about protection, is how you protect your financial resources by just really mitigating the risk that comes with that. So our first port of call with these things generally tends to be insurance, as you know. So a lot of us would, for example, a major asset which most of us have is the properties we live in. You notice even when you have a mortgage, the lender would insist you have an insurance because it's really to protect that risk. So if anything were to go wrong with that property, they feel that they're covered, because when anything goes wrong with a property of a structural nature, most of the time is beyond what the average person can afford. So they would insist that you insure it. So when it comes to protection, what we're referring to there is protecting oneself from financial loss as a result of something going wrong. So when you take on insurance, is where the insurer will agree to compensate you for any losses incurred in the event of a specific loss. So that could be, for example, a car accident, you lose your mobile phone, or your house gets flooded, or there's a fire. So those are the little things that they can be very big hitters. So to mitigate those losses and protect yourself against those things, this is where the insurance comes in. So and why do we insure? It's just to help us reduce the financial risk we expose ourselves to. So normally you realize if you go to insure your home, they would say, actually, how much is your house worth? What's the rebuilding cost? So that's as an example. We find in finance, for example, the cost of a house, most of the time the land is more expensive than the actual structure itself. So you'll find your insurers would say the property is worth maybe £20, but to rebuild it will cost maybe £8, because £12 of that 20 is the land, So, and then you have other things such as legal litigations that you'll face. So, for example, if you have an accident and somebody goes after you, your insurance will take over. So those are costs that ordinarily you won't be able to take on, because it's just beyond our means. So that's why we take on insurance as a means of protecting oneself. And there are some forms of insurance here that most of us will be familiar with. We'll start with your house. That's the buildings and contents. And for your car, you got third party and fully comp. And I remember when I started driving, I couldn't afford a fully comp. I got a third party. But what that meant is, if I suffered a loss, so if I hit somebody, I'm saying to the insurance company, I'll take care of myself. You take care of the third party that I hit. So it's not until you get into those situations that you realize it wasn't worth the paper it was written on from your point of view. And that's why it's always...
Amidou, sorry. I take it that you were showing a different slide, because we're still on the one with budget tip.
No, that's just me ad-libbing, because it will
okay.
confuse people. Okay, I'll just take that one off, sorry. And then there's things for your household gadgets that are covered as well. So if you imagine, sometimes when you go for contents insurance, they'll ask you, what are the most valuable items? And gadgets such as laptops, iPhones, and everything, they get covered on that. And when we travel as well, we take travel insurance. Because I remember in that case, I had a member of the family travel and they needed to be evacuated by medical ambulance or air ambulance, and the insurance just kicked in. So those are little examples we have. And the thing I want to impart as well on insurance is just the three key things you need to know, or one needs to know. So firstly, if you go to buy an insurance, they say it'll cost you. And what that means is that the premium you pay is the cost of buying that insurance protection. So your insurer agrees to protect you from theft, break-ins, or fire, or flooding. So they say it costs you this much. So that's the cost of the protection you're paying for. And the other thing to take note of is the excess, because a lot of the time we confuse excess. What excess means is the portion of the loss. Let's say I insured my car for so many, whatever it is, for the value of it. So the insurer will ask me, what part of the loss are you willing to take on? So you'll notice that the excess will start at £50, £100. The idea is, if you went to the insurer and said, I suffered a loss, they will say, okay, how much is it? Let's say it was £1,000. And they'll say, what was your excess? And you say 250, for example. That means at the time of taking on the insurance, you said to the insurers, for every loss I suffer, the first £250, you don't need to worry, I'll take care of it. So the insurers will only give you $750. So that's why sometimes if you're taking on insurance, it's good to know that actually, if you're trying to increase the excess, you could be exposing yourself to more proportion of the amount you pay in for. So it's just worth knowing that. And then the exclusions, really very important things. When I go to take insurance policy, I don't ask them what I'm covered for first. I ask, what am I not covered for? Because that's really what's important to me. If it says, well, you're not covered for fire and theft, well, I want to be covered for fire and theft. I'll say, I want that back in there. So don't overlook that. It's a critical bit that one must look at all the time. So in a nutshell, that's insurance for you. Sorry, I didn't have a sort of tab for that, because I just thought there's too much to go through and not bore you with that. And the next step is, sorry, I just wanted to thank you for your time. I've taken any questions and any possible topics you want us to cover for the future going forward. So I'm going to stop sharing now and go visible. Is that okay? Thanks, Clive.
Yes, Amidou. just looking at the chat, there is only one question I can see.
Cool.
Well, there's a couple of things. One, there's some people on this call that was really expecting to be informed about how they're going to become a millionaire tomorrow, and you've not provided them with that information. And
Oh, seriously.
and this, so there's a point here about looking for the punchline, how to become a millionaire. So, but maybe more seriously, the question is, Zora wants to talk about how to go about buying stocks and shares.
Okay. Okay.
I think the principles, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay. But thanks for that. The stocks and shares, Zora, are just another form of investing, and what that means is, if you go for stocks, effectively, you're buying into a company. Let's say you wanted to invest in Clive and Co. and Clive is listed in the stock exchange. You can buy ordinary shares to the extent that you can afford, and that what that gives you rights to is it gives you rights to dividends. So when Clive trades in the course of the year and he happens to make a profit, he can say, maybe if he made, let's say, £100 worth of profit, he can say, well, £50 of that 100 will be distributed as dividends to the shareholders. So in this case, Zora might have been the sole shareholder, so that £50 goes to Zora. That's how it works. But one of the things that are worth highlighting on investments is that it's a very risky process. So you must do your research. Don't just trust the professional that says, oh, invest all your money in this thing and leave it at that. And we advise for diversified portfolios. So what it means effectively is don't put all your eggs in one basket. So that £50, what you want to do is invest it in different sectors of the economy. For example, now the talk is the environment is a big area where there'll be a lot of actually money being thrown into, billions being thrown into it, into green projects and all this sort of thing. So for the future going forward, that's one area to look into as an example, whereas all fossil fuel companies like BP, you can see them moving into green technology. So that's one area that's moving. And the other area tend to be companies that do a lot of property development, like the Parsimons of this world. They tend to do very well, but all those are full of risk. So what I suggest you do is, firstly, you need to establish your risk appetite, i.e. how much loss are you willing to take before you say, I will never do this again, or before you think actually fine. But equally importantly, you need to look at long term. So remember when we spoke about long term earlier, when we were saying more than 5 years and above. So let's look at Tesla. Tesla was making losses for best part of its trading year or its trading existence. And I think this week we realized that it's one of the few companies that's now hit the $1 trillion mark, and they still haven't reached their potential. So you need to look at the long term in that way, as I would advise for all things like that. The other area is bonds as well. So governments will issue bonds, which is you lend them and they'll guarantee you a fixed income. That is more risk averse, but the rewards are slightly lower as opposed to dividends. So those are the things that I would advise to look into. Another area as well is if you're into property and you're willing to take the pain that goes with being a landlord, in that case, what you're looking for is not just the income. You're looking at the value of the property as it appreciates over the course of several years. So when you come to sell it, you will make a gain that you can then say, had you put that money in the bank, you will not get as much as that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Amidou. Thank you.
I suppose, Amidou, another point, listening to what you're saying there, is that when it comes to investing, then people should also be conscious of your original rule, the 50-20-30 rule, so that actually it's only when you're meeting your needs that you should really be risking investing, because you shouldn't be investing what you can't afford to lose.
Yeah, I mean, investment is not risk-free. And don't just look at the glossy periods. Just look at, imagine if that company were to go into liquidation, for example, okay? Can you, if you imagine you had 10K in a company and one morning you woke up, they said there's been a massive fraud in that company and there are issues. Can you really forego that hit? And that's why you say, okay, diversify that 10,000. Maybe you want to put 2,000 here, 1,000 there. So you're right, Clive, in that respect. And you just need to be, just don't rely on the specialist. You need to do your research as well enough.
There's an observation here about that investing might be about doing the lottery. And but also, what do you think about investing in gold? The price seems to keep on going up.
Yeah, I mean, see, when you come to investing, it's like you want to look at appreciating assets, and gold. The reason gold is important is even the central banks, they hold a lot of gold reserves. So if you imagine when the government really needs to really get money quickly, it will sell its gold reserve. For example, if the pound is doing badly, they will sell their gold reserves because gold is a universal currency, if you like, in a metal form. So if you invest in gold, you probably will find that over time you'll get back your money, but you need to know what you're getting into because they're subject to corrections as well. So precious metals, as a rule of law, gold is good. For example, I have a friend who goes around car boot sales, and he specializes in buying metals that have got precious metals in them. And he'll take it. He used to take me to Chancery Lane, at the back there. He's a Jewish chap of mine, and he will take me to places where you sell the gold straight away the same day. So he'll watch how they're doing, and when he hits a point that he's happy to forego his gold, he'll go and sell it and get the money he needs on the same day. So it's another way of really actually investing in a more secure way.
Great, thank you, Amidou, much appreciated.
Thank you. Any more questions? Favour is around as well. Hi, Favour.
Hi, I'm here. How are you, Amidou?
I'm not too bad, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I wanted to ask somebody asked me, and I didn't have the answer, to be honest, about investing in Bitcoin. I didn't, oh, someone has put it there, actually. Michaela has put it there. Yeah, I didn't have the answer because, like you said, you have to judge your risk appetite.
Yeah.
Personally, I know where my risk appetite sits. So
Yeah.
there are things I try to avoid. When I don't understand something, I'm not too keen to run into investing in it.
Yeah.
So that's just me, but other people are more more willing to take risks than I am, probably. Yeah. Yeah. So what's your view?
Thanks for that question, Favour. Because the thing about investment is your risk appetite. Some people are risk averse. For me as an accountant, you know, anything that the way it works is the higher the rewards, the greater the risk. Yeah. So it's like if you imagine you climbing that tree to reach the ripest fruit right on top. Yeah. Just in case you don't reach it, if you were to fall, yeah, you really have a longer fall to fall. So what you must realize, if something is so good, just realize that you know, the risks are greater, but also, you know, the money you put into Bitcoin is not safe from fluctuations. How many times have you had Bitcoin is gone up, is gone down, and it's what you call a volatile investment. You know, every day could bring you a different amount of value. So young people, their risk appetite is greater. But if you have got all your pension money, and let's say, oh, you've done an equity release, if you were putting into Bitcoin, you might as well bye-bye with it, because one day you'll not get what you want out of it. You know, so it's what we class as a volatile investment. It's not safe, and then it's not a regulated market. So anything could happen. Somebody could hack you and get your Bitcoin details, for example. Where would you go to reclaim it? So it's very important that you know where you go with that. If you're investing, make sure it's in a regulated environment.
And Amidou, the day before you want your money, Elon Musk might make a statement about Bitcoin and all the money's gone.
Yeah, that's very important, Clive. That's why we call it a volatile investment, because it's just really every day there's swings and roundabouts on that one. And you know, the day you want to reap that little Bitcoin reward, you have a problem. And then also it's not legal tender. So have you tried to go to the high street and spend Bitcoin money? Has anybody tried it?
I don't have any.
No.
Yeah.
But they
So-
did say there are some country, I can't remember which country it is now.
El Salvador.
Yeah, sorry?
El Salvador.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's made it legal tender in bars and whatever. But for, and they said you can convert it to cash as well, withdraw it from your wallet or whatever. Like I said, I'm kind of, my risk appetite is only very low. So I only think about properties and shares. I don't think, I'm not quite savvy with things like that. So,
Sorry, Favor, but I mean, came across something that said that somebody had millions of pounds of Bitcoin, but they'd lost their, they were locked out because they couldn't remember the sequence of numbers or whatever it is that you
I have no idea.
That's true. That's true. That's true. But the thing with Bitcoin as well, you know, you got the underworld, they like things like that. So you keep in company with wolves if you like, yeah. So and sharks. So the thing is, you want to go somewhere where you know you got a level of protection, because remember, if it's your hard-earned cash that you invest, if you lose it, it leaves you very vulnerable. Yeah. So it's very important that you take it to somewhere where you know it's regulated. The rewards might not be high, but you want to make sure your money is safe first and foremost. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amidou, you and I were talking before though about there's something about people thinking about their financial priorities, and thinking about becoming an overnight millionaire is kind of wishful thinking. But actually, the reality is that most of us got to think about how do we do it otherwise? Because actually, the other thing about this sort of thing is that you may become a millionaire, but it means that probably somebody else is existing in poverty. What we probably need to think about is how do we actually look at how we structure our income and our expenditure in such a way that actually we make at least gradual progress. We don't end up placing ourselves in a position where we can't pay those bills that are about meeting your needs because we're chasing sort of dreams that is for the next world.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because I tell you one of the observations I've made within our community, and it's centered around debt. Now, you know, debt is a very sensitive issue, but debt is not necessarily bad, but there are two types of debt. There's what I call good debt and bad debt. Okay. You know, like we've got what we call assets in life. They're appreciating assets and depreciating assets. So a classic example is you buy a car. A car is a depreciating asset. Every day you drive that car is worth less than the day before. But more importantly is when you buy a brand new car from a dealer, the moment you drive it off that forecourt, you lost thousands of pounds. So what we try to get people to appreciate is if you're taking on debt to buy an appreciating asset, say investing in bricks and mortars, starting a new business, that's fine, because in the end, it'll pay for itself. But when you take tens of thousands of pounds and put it in an X5 or the next Tesla, you lose out, because in the end, that money you'll never get back, but also the car will never really bring you back that same value. You might get the enjoyment you want out of it. So for our community, I think it's very important for people to appreciate that when you take on a debt, make sure it's going to really build you an asset base rather than a liability base in the form of a car. Yeah, that to me is something that pains me all the time, because I see it all the time.
I don't know if you can answer this question, Amidou, but somebody's asked a question, I think Galaxy S8. What is the best long-term saving plan currently on the market? I think, I don't know if you did that research before you came on tonight.
I think, let me check. I normally have my witch report here, which tells you, but at the moment, I mean, what do we mean by long-term, sorry, by the way?
Galaxy S8, do you want to expand on what you're meaning?
Is Galaxy S8 available, yeah?
Well, they're not speaking.
Okay. let me give you, I'm assuming that they want to invest in savings, for example, Clive. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes, my little weekly report here. So, like we have what I call which I subscribe to which, so it just tells me how to really use my money well. So for example, the going rate at the moment on interest rates is very, very low. So
Amidou, Amidou, Galaxy
Mhm.
S8 said at least 5 years.
5 years. Okay, let me see something. So long time. I think the best bit I would recommend that they put it in ISAs, because the way ISAs work is you can go for a mixed portfolio approach, but equally importantly, you don't lose. The risk is very low. And because they can invest in stocks and shares for you can have a diversified portfolio. That's where I will go. If you went for stocks and shares, it's subject to the vagaries of the market. But if it's your only sole base of money, and I don't know what the amount is, I would go for ISAs first. That way you got a secure base, it'll grow and the risk is minimal. But if you've got a substantial amount, you can do you can do in stocks and shares if you're looking at 5 years, but go for safe stocks, and you can do ISAs as well. And if you're not inclined that you have excess, you can look at property as well, because property will continue to do well. The way it works is, as a nation, I think we need to build about 300,000 homes every year, and that target has never been fulfilled. So therefore, the demand is always higher than the supply. I hope that helps. But from a savings point of view, you don't get anything on savings. Savings is not worth the hassle anymore.
There was a point here, Amidou, about bricks and mortar never loses value. What are your thoughts about that? Particularly the point about never.
No, well, I would put a caveat to that, because we remember in the 90s when interest rates were 15% and property prices were plummeting. So the market is subject to correction. But if you imagine your investment horizon is 10 years plus, you can get it right. So if you're going on it to hurriedly get into it for like less than 5 years, then people are wasting your time. But if you're looking for 10 years and above, yeah, you can do it, because what is important is during the pandemic last year, property prices rose between 8 and 10%. Yeah. So on average, on a good year, you can get that much. But if you imagine, you probably get 5% increments every year over 10, 20 years. If you compound, that is a lot. So if you bought a property at 150, you might walk away with doubling your money if you left it for a significant period of time. That's what you call appreciation or capital gains in that regard.
I would say I was having a conversation with someone, Amidou. We were just speculating that if you had the money, and there may be some millionaires on this call, and you could buy a property outright, actually that could prove to be a better form of investment than putting your money in the bank, because even you could probably make a 5% return by, say, investing in some properties and renting them out, than the nothing that you'd get from the bank at the moment. What's your thought about that?
Okay, my thought about property investment is good, because the two things about property: you get a steady income, okay, because you got a tenant occupying the property, they pay you rent every month. So if you offset your mortgage payment, say if you borrowed, if you didn't, you just get a straight rent. So you get a steady income. So let's say you retired, you want a steady stream of income. That's one way of one place to park your money. But eventually as well, let's say your family grows, you want to really help your children have an equity stake. You can then say, actually, you can leverage that property by remortgaging it. Okay, by remortgaging it, you can then say, actually, I can give part of the proceeds to my family, and they can then get on the property ladder. But also, when you get to a point where you feel, actually, I think I can sell now and live off the money that's left, you can do the same thing. You can sell the property. It'd be subject to capital gains tax and all these sort of things, but it'd be better than if you had put the money in the bank. So I would say, as a first port of call, bricks and mortars, you can never go wrong. so long as you accept for the fact that there'll be corrections at certain points in the process.
The other point, Amidou, that I would make, I can't see anything else in the chat, is that, for example, some people kind of talk about whether or not you should invest in a property to live in. Let's forget about to make money now. And the point that I've often shared with people is that I saved and did forego some luxuries, some of those things beyond what was needed. And I got myself in a position where I actually paid off the mortgage on the property. And literally, my equation is that I've been living for the last 15 years rent-free because actually there was no mortgage. So imagine that allows me to save some money in a way that wouldn't have been possible otherwise. Whereas if you're paying rent, and some people do have to pay rent. I mean, that is a situation some people find themselves in. But if you're in a position where you can make some adjustment in order to invest in a home, then you will get to that point, particularly if it's a capital repayment mortgage, where you will actually end up living as I am now, rent-free.
I think you're a top investor, Clive. The thing is as well, in paying off your mortgage early, you know, when we borrow, there's a cost to it, and it's called interest. Yeah. So if you imagine you had kept the money in the bank, you'll be getting interest that will be lower than the interest you're paying your lender. Yeah. So if you pay off your mortgage, you are then in a stronger position because borrowing costs you, apart from the admin fees cost. So by doing that, you save yourself from mortgage payments, but equally importantly, the vagaries of interest rate that we have been subjected to has gone. So once you, if you like, expunge your mortgage, your finances can work better for you because then you can use those savings to invest in other things as well. So rule one is just get rid of that mortgage as soon as you can because it's the biggest liability we have in our lives. Yeah. And remember, the property is not yours until you fully pay the mortgage.
Yes,
yeah?
Yes, indeed. Amidou, somebody said, I'm definitely, this is one for you, not for me. Can you talk a little about compound interest rate, please?
Right, before you do that, Pauline's got her hand up. She's had her hand up a while.
Marlene?
No, Pauline.
Pauline, please.
Thank you very much. I do apologize. Greetings to each and every one. I came in while the links have only literally just been sent the link, but
that's okay.
You've gone muted.
Was about, I thought I had to come in. What I want to know is, you were talking about properties. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, when you were talking about properties, were you pertaining to properties in the UK or was that global? Because I was considering buying a property overseas to rent out, especially while I wasn't there. Do you think that's a fairly good idea? There is people that I would have that can maintain the property, but obviously I will deal with ensure that the financial element of it is taken care of. I would deal with that myself.
Firstly, you know, when you're investing overseas, you want to really know what the property rights and rules are of that country because it's very important. In some places, non-nationals cannot acquire property, and the worst thing you want to do is buy it or acquire it in the name of somebody else because that would expose you to bigger risks. So firstly, let's say you find that you can acquire property in a place where you legally can entitle yourself to it. Then you look at the risks. You know, can you manage it from far? What happens if the people that have actually, you know, volunteered to manage it for you, if they're no longer in the picture, what can you do? So you need to manage all those risks before you look at making that critical decision. So if you ask me, without knowing where it is, without knowing what the legislation is, I will ask you to do all those things first and make sure legally you have a position that gives you the comfort and peace of mind you need before you go for it. And also look at the region as well. Some areas, property, like if you look at people that own property in Spain, You know, when the crash came in Spain, they had big problems. So just look at the area and research what the property market has been, and importantly, what areas to invest in as well. So do your due diligence, as we say, tick all those boxes first and seek professional advice before you go for it. But you can never go wrong with property if you get all those things right.
There may also be an issue, Amidou, about how you're financing that property, because do you have the cash to do it? Are you borrowing the money, and are you borrowing the money from there, or are you taking the money from here? That may also impact on the direction that you take in relation to that.
Good point. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that. A call came in while you were talking to me. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. That's really informative. Because I do properties over here. That is my job.
Right.
I buy properties over here, but I was thinking of sort of like branching out. So to speak. So I wanted to know what could be the pitfalls and what you could advise. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and also, by the way, also look at the tax implications because you as a UK national, some of the gains you make, if you import it back to the UK, you could be subject to tax as well. So look at all those things.
So it's best to leave it's best to leave it in the country concern. So it's not so the.
But yeah, because if you remit
the UK.
Yeah, if you remit your foreign earnings to the UK, particularly on property, you might be subject to tax as well. So you might be taxed there and taxed here.
And the exchange rate as well.
Yeah.
Exchange rate cost as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay.
Was
there a question on compound interest?
Sorry, Pearline, I think there's a, can you talk, Zora wants you to talk a little about compound interest was, I think, can you talk a little about compound interest? Yeah, okay. Compound interest, thank you, Zora, for that question. Is really, if you imagine you take on a loan, so you take on a loan for let's say £100. So that's what you call the principal. Let's say the interest is 10%. So that means at the end of the year, you pay £10 towards that loan. So what compound interest is the accumulated interest from the previous period. So let's say you got interest from month 1 to month 12. If you accumulate them all and accumulate them and do that for 2 years, that's you compounding it. So you're paying interest on interest, if you like, yeah? Is that helpful, Zora? So I think the point is that you're making.
My question is, how can it be paid off? What's the most efficient way of avoiding it or reducing it?
Okay, the most, because you cannot change the rate, and the interest is based on the principal, which is the loan sum. So the way to attack compound interest is to really get rid of the loan itself, the principal amount. So if you are paying, let's say you're servicing your loan, £20 a month, they're saying £10 goes to the compound interest and £10 goes to the principal, which is the loan. If you were £100, it take you a lot longer. So what you want to do, you might want to say £20 towards the principal and £10 towards the loan. So the interest you pay will be lower because the amount you've been charged on is lessened every month by the fact that you increasing the payment on it, if you like. Is that clear?
That's the principle on which mortgages are based on, isn't it? Amidou?
Yeah, so it's the same thing. Yeah.
By overpaying, you're reducing the capital base, which therefore also reduces the amount of compound interest you end up paying.
Yeah, the interest you pay. Yeah, and the thing to note as well.
Sorry, I believe they use this approach on some credit cards as well.
Yes. Yeah, the same thing. You with all loans, you would just want to tackle the principal, which is a loan sum, but also some lenders are very crafty. Yeah, they have clauses in it that says if you pay beyond a certain sum, you'll be subject to charge. So you need to be very careful of that. So they want to keep you trapped as well.
Well, a lot of mortgages where, for example, you have a fixed rate mortgage, they will specify that you can't overpay more than 10% of the capital sum. Yeah. So certainly, and if you do, you then get into charges. So absolutely.
Thank you.
Zora, you're walking towards being this millionaire, I can see.
Okay. Amidou, I think we don't have any more questions, but Pearline wanted to come in, and that may be where we try to conclude. Before Pearline comes in, Amidou raised a point earlier on that might be helpful for people to think about, which is, are there any financial questions that you might want, or any areas of finance you might want us to think about coming back to have a look at in a bit more depth? Because actually we're here to support our community. So if you want to put anything in the chat about future possible areas that you might be interested in us addressing, then please do put it in the chat. Over to you, Pearline.
Now, what I wanted to say to the young lady that asked about buying property abroad, for something I know for someone, is if you're thinking of a foreign country, make sure you understand the language of that country very well before you invest there, because that can cause a lot of problems.
Okay, thanks, Pearline.
And also my finance question is, I know a few people of retirement and reach certain age are talking about taking equity off their property, whether to, whatever they wanted to do, but it's to take some of the money off and use it. What are the risks of that?
I imagine this is a case of where somebody has fully paid for the house and they're just sitting on it as it is, and they feel like actually we can take something out of it. But equity release is just another form of debt, because let's say you have a fully paid for property and you wanted to get into equity release. What you're doing is just really saying, I want to release that equity that I have in the property in the form of borrowing. So that means the lender then will own, if your property was worth X amount, you do an equity release for Y amount, then you're taking on a liability. It's another form of debt, really. And what it means is your property is worth less if you go to sell it finally, or in the case of it being inherited, if your family were to inherit it, the lender of that equity has first call. So if they was to sell the property, whatever the proceeds are, the lender will then have first call, and then whoever inherits it or whoever takes the proceeds will just get less that. So it's really getting into another form of a mortgage, really, only that you don't pay anything, I imagine, straight away.
But does it incur interest?
I haven't investigated, but I think it will be incurring interest, because the way. Sorry, go on.
Yes, I think there is. It's just like another mortgage, so there is an interest. On it.
It's a new mortgage. It's an interest.
It is a mortgage disguised in something as that. That's all.
I think the point generally around those sorts of things is that if you get to a certain age and you might think that actually I might want to release some money to go on holiday and enjoy my time of life because the end is near, or you might think,
careful, come on, Clive.
Or you might think that I've got children and grandchildren. I actually want to give them some money now, and I haven't got it in the bank. So let's release this money, because who knows, I might end up in a home and the government is going to take most of it anyway. So let's do that sort of thing now. And I know that really at the end of the day, there may not be anything left, because there's going to be this interest racking up during the period that that money has been taken out. Particularly if you are, I think there's a form where you don't have to repay anything, and it's just taken out of whatever's left after you pass on. There's some way I think you can repay, but I mean it's a mortgage.
Yeah, it is a mortgage, because you pay interest on it, and the danger is as well you might withdraw more money than you need. So the recommendation is that you do it to enhance the property instead, rather to like do an extension or something like that, because you get it back of it. But if it's to go on a Swanee, on a holiday, on a cruise, it's still a debt.
I want to ask one question about pension. People that were thinking about taking a percentage of their pension when they reach, is it 55 plus now? I can't remember what age.
Yeah.
In the public sector, it's generally 55.
Yes. What would be your view about that?
I mean, my view really is that a pension is an investment. So if you imagine you working up to the age of 55 when you take something of your pension, the way it works is your employer contributes to your employer's pension, you're forgoing that contribution, but also your pension will be worthless at the end of your pensionable, at the beginning of your pensionable phase of your life. So really, are you saying you know, unless you have good reason to take that money, you have to be careful because you're going to be living on less once you release that equity. So my answer is you have to have compelling reasons, and whatever you put it into must be worth more than what you get if you were to not disturb that pension for what it will be worth to you in the end. Let's say if you were to be paid a pensionable sum of 5K every month at the end of your employment life, and you did a release, so you effectively will be doing, let's say you took 25% off, you'll be having 75% of the 5K. Yeah, if you can live with that, then fine. But also remember that when you retire, your income is fixed and inflation would eat through your income over time. So it's going to be more than the 25%, yeah.
Some people would think it might be worth it taking maybe 25% of their pension and maybe go back to Africa or the Caribbean to sort of build their life, so to say, when if you convert the money, it's kind of more, if you see what I'm saying. And because at the end of the day, I don't want to end up in care home here.
Well, I mean, the thing is, if you imagine you took that 25% off and had a land somewhere where you can build and get rent of that, that will pay you more than that 25% is worth here. It makes sense.
Yeah. And like I said, I don't want to retire and live here. It's, you know, I want to go and enjoy the sun and enjoy my people. You know, anyway.
Yeah, but it's one of those things that you just need to think through. Don't just take the money and not invest it. Take the money and put it into something that's worth more than it will be fetching you here. That's what I would say.
Yeah. I've warned my daughter, never ever think of putting me in care home here.
Well, I would say to your favor that my hope is that I won't get to a point in my life where I need to go into our care home needs to be a consideration. I need to die peacefully in my bed. So, Amidou, it looks as if people have decided that this meeting should have started at 8 o'clock, because actually we seem to be getting people still joining us when we should have been.
That's okay.
Scheduled into an end.
There's a question here, Clive. I'm not sure you saw it, from Zora as well. Yeah.
Yes. What about gifting your asset to your children?
Okay, very good question. Very good question, actually. Well done, Zora. I mean, there's what we call inheritance tax. Okay, so the way inheritance tax works is if at the end of one's time here, your assets that you leave behind for your family, it will be subject to tax. So the way the Inland Revenue works that out is they will value it and they tax at different rates. So let's say you left a car, you left a house, and all these things, they'll value it all, and then sort of then say, okay, if it was worth £100, maybe the tax on it would be £30, so your family are left with £70. And these days you pay it imminently, you know, if they're valued and you pay it, and most of the time you would have the means to do that. So what some very financially astute families do is they call it tax planning. So gifting effectively is when you give away your asset. So in this case, let's say, for example, some property. What clever families do is if you gift an asset to a family member, there's a clock start ticking. I'm sorry. So can I continue? Yeah.
Yes.
So the way inheritance tax works, you can gift your asset, say in this case a home or your primary residence, to one of your children or the family itself. But the way it works is if you do it early, after 7 years, there's no tax on it. So what you effectively need to do is decide when you want that to happen. And then when you're gifting, it must be what you avoid, what we call gift with a reservation, i.e. you gift it to say the children and you live in it. That's a reservation because you're living in it while you gift it to them. So what you must do is pay a token rent towards it. But the whole point is, if you survive that gift, let's say you gifted something we're now 2020, yeah? If you gifted it now, so 7 years from now, the tax due on that will be nil because you've survived the gift by 7 years. So that's a very good tax planning tool that a lot of wealthy families do.
Amidou, it's a quick question in relation to that though. So say you give a child 50,000 today, because generally the normal gifting regulation is that you can give up to 3,000 tax-free.
It varies every year, doesn't it?
If you give the child 50,000, that's sort of 47,000 above this annual sum that you can give without any tax. What you're saying is that actually, so long as you survive for 7 years, then there's in fact no tax due on that 50,000 gift.
No. The gift that we're referring to for inheritance tax purposes is the property. But if you gift him 50K, that will be subject to tax. There will be, let's say the threshold is 3,000.
Yes.
Yeah. So what the land revenue will say, okay, Clive, you need to pay tax on the 47,000. Yeah. But when you look at your primary asset, say a property, if you didn't do anything and time is up, taxman says, okay, we value the assets at this much. We think you should pay 30% CGT. The family automatically has to come up with it, and most of the time they have to sell it. So what is advisable is to plan, and the thing is, we call it succeeding a gift. So for every 1 year you succeed the gift, up to 7 years, you pay 1/7 less, 2/7 less until you go 100%. So that's a very important part of things. Yeah. So just remember with tax planning, you start with your primary asset, which is your house and your cars, your if you like, your jewelries and everything, and then the taxman will decide how much he'll take of it. But if you do it earlier, it's better. Another clever thing to do is to set up a trust, particularly for like grandchildren. So you have appoint a trustee, and that's a very tax efficient way of doing things as well.
So you've answered Marlene's question there, because she was made mention of what about putting your property in trust? So I think
trust is and we use it in tax planning to skip a generation. Say we use it. It's a very clever way of skipping a generation. So if you wanted to skip your children's generation and go to the grandchildren, a trust is a very clever way of doing it, because you have people that will manage it for them until they turn 18, and it's a lot more efficient.
Can I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
When you put a property, for argument's sake, in a trust, do you put the name of everybody you want in the trust? Is that how it works?
Yeah, you identify the beneficiaries. In this case, they'll be the people that you nominate to benefit from them, and then they'll appoint a set of trustees who will manage it for them until they turn 18.
Okay, so any money you make from the property, for argument's sake, if you were to have a property and you were to rent it, and then you also put it in a trust for the children, does the property still belong to you, or would it belong to the ones in the trust?
Yes, a benefit. We call them the beneficiaries. It'll belong to them. So let's say you had a rented property in trust for them. They'll benefit from the income because the trustees will share that. They could choose to invest it for them until they turn 18 or give them part of that. Or you can say, actually, you know what, I want to reinvest it. So when they turn to 18, the money that the property is acquired and the value that it's going to buy, when they sell it all, they can benefit from it. So it's a very, very clever tool.
Amidou, I think we are talking about potentially, there's been a number of questions, I think, relating to that area. I'm just wondering whether or not that might be an issue for another conversation, because the other thing that occurs to me, there is the different type of property ownership. So there is where you can be joint tenants or your tenants in common.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
And there is potential in areas to whether or not, for example, you could sort of put your children onto your property and create what you might call, so we become tenants in common, so that when you die, the property passes to them. But I imagine the 7-year rule would still apply. I think maybe we need to have a conversation about a topic like that. And I see, Marilyn has suggested that issues around that kind of thing might be an area that could be considered in another session, since it looks as if there's a few people that has an interest in the property and some of the issues around that. Galaxy S8 need to leave, so thank you very much for joining us. Shall we call it a day there, Amidou? And I said earlier on that if people wanted to suggest a topic that we might want to consider, you could put it in the chat, because I must admit that I was wondering whether this session would have lasted an hour, and I was struggling to finish. And we're nearly an hour and a half. So, so do put some stuff in the chat if you think that there's anything that we could follow up, because our group does look at things that will be happening not just during October but throughout the year. So Amidou, thank you very much. You've given a comprehensive overview of the basic issues around the money and money management, and to be honest, I think you've gone beyond the basic.
You're going to put your video on, Clive?
Oh, who wants to see me? So you've gone beyond the basic, Amidou, and I mean, I know the numbers were not great for this, and that's unfortunate. Please do
15,
say to,
that's good.
Please do say to people who, when you've been on there, that they might like to watch the recording of this session, because I think it will be interesting for people to do.
Hello, Clive, can I just
So I'm going to say thank you, Amidou, for that. I think it was well worth waiting for. This is the third last of our events, and you'll see we put in the chat the link to our Black History Month program, where you can find out what else is happening. There's 2 more events. We've got an event where we're going to enjoy some music and cooking on Saturday, and then we finish off on Sunday with our quiz night. So please share that information, and if you leave your email address with us, we will make sure you get a copy of the recording of this session. So that's it. And a last word from you, Amidou, just to conclude, because actually this was your session.
Thanks, Clive. Firstly, I want to thank everybody that's given up their valuable evening to listen to Boring Finance. It's not the most alluring of issues, so thank you. And you could have been doing much more better. But also, I'm more than happy to look at an area called tax planning. I think Marilyn alluded to trustees and everything. We can schedule something in if you let Clive know, and maybe we can touch on 1 or 2 areas of the core as well. So if you can please field in any queries or questions you have to Clive, then maybe sometime in the new year when we've all had our Christmas, we can look at this again or earlier. But I'm more than willing to do this quarterly, whatever the topical issues are, and we can look at it, because I think, for us who've been here for generations now, we've acquired wealth, and it's how to make sure that you don't fritter it away by giving it away to the tax man. So thank you for your time.
Thanks for that, Amidou. It looks as if somebody's mentioned pensions in the chat.
Yeah, that's fine.
And I think you've mentioned tax planning, and there is stuff regarding property issues that, and somebody wants to know more about digital currency, Bitcoin. So
okay.
There's somebody who wants to go and take some serious risk, so they want to talk about digital currency. So tomorrow morning you'll be able to find a recording on the the YouTube channel that Marilyn has kindly put in the chat there for you. So if you make a note of that link, it should be there by tomorrow morning. You should be able to see that.
What time Saturday are you doing another program?
What time is the event on Saturday?
It's at 1 p.m. on Saturday. So it's 1 p.m. till 2 p.m. That's with Joe. And then the quiz night is back to 7 p.m. So hopefully you're around on Saturday afternoon, because it will be
is the quiz night not Sunday?
Yes, it's on Sunday.
Oh.
The question
right. So one is Saturday and one is Sunday.
Yeah.
That's right. The cooking and the music is on Saturday. The quiz night is on Sunday.
Okay. And the cooking is at 1 o'clock on Saturday.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks everybody. I'm going to stop the recording now.